Adam and Eve, right, the mother and father of all humanity. So you can give them a mythological slant, and you can say, Adam is culture, say, and Eve is nature. Because they're the archetypal parents, it's a perfectly reasonable interpretation. They have twin sons, Cain and Abel. So let's read firstborn creatures, firstborn human creatures, in the new self-conscious world. So what are the first two individuals in the new self-conscious world like? And let's find out. And Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. And again she bare his brother Abel, the younger brother. And Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And in the process of time it came to pass that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord. Okay, so we're going to remove this from this story from its entrapment in a particular temporal domain, and within a temporal culture, we're going to say something like this. Well, if you work, you make sacrifices, right? That's what work's all about. And the reason you make sacrifices is because you're offering up to the unknown the fruits of your labor in the hope that as a consequence of your diligent effort, you're going to be favored, right? Because otherwise, why work? The point of working is to transform the transcendent into something benevolent. So you work and you work and you work and you say, is that sufficient? And the answer you get from the transcendent is the answer. Now, it's certainly true that lots of people work and it doesn't go all that well, right? They make sacrifices and they do what they think they have to do, and their life is one string of catastrophes after another, right? So we have this situation. In the process of time it came to pass that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord. And Abel, he also brought of the firstlings of his flock and of the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel and his offering. So what that means is that old Abel, working away, man, things are going great for him, right? Fortune smiles on him. He's doing wonderfully. He's got everything he needs. Well, old Cain, he's scrounging away in the ground, and things aren't going as well for him at all, right? Plagues, locusts, you name it. Farm life isn't going well. So what happens? Well, Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. Well, precisely, right? Because if you work diligently towards a certain end and you don't get there, then your countenance falls, right? You're angry, frustrated, disappointed, hurt, anxious, threatened, ashamed, guilty, the whole panoply of negative emotions. And that's fair enough, because of course if you fail, that's what's going to be the consequence. But then there's this little twist on it, right? This specifically human twist. It's like the kind of moral of the whole story. And so you find the Lord saying, oh, well, you know, what's up with you? Why are you so unhappy? If you just got your act together, then you'd be accepted. If you really got your act together, which is a statement something like this. If you keep making sacrifices and the same terrible thing keeps happening, there's always the possibility that you're just actually not doing it the right way. And if you just get yourself straightened up, tapped together, right, and drop the preconceptions that you don't really need and adjust your behavior accordingly, then fortune would smile on you. And that's exactly what the Lord says to Cain, right? You don't walk around with such a crabby look on your face. If you did well, you'll be accepted. And if you don't do well, sin lies at the door. So what does that mean? Well, this is a deep motif in ancient Hebrew thinking. If the world isn't laying itself out in a manner that you find acceptable, you're faced with a tough choice. Either the world is a terrible place bent on your destruction, or you're doing something wrong. And it bloody well better be that you're doing something wrong. Because if the world is a terrible place bent on your destruction, you've got absolutely no hope. And Cain talked with Abel his brother. And it came to pass, when they were in the field, that Cain rose up against Abel his brother and killed him. So what does that mean? Well, it's pretty easy. It's simple. It means this. Well, say things aren't going that well for you. And it's really not because life's unfair and everything's stacked against you. It's because you're kind of a arrogant, stubborn, quasi-totalitarian, cowardly idiot. And as a consequence of that, the world is turning into something resembling a wasteland around you. And you have this option. Change or continue. Or you have another option. Man, look around. There's all those people doing well. The world's a terrible place bent on my destruction. Wouldn't it be just the most interesting thing if as things are going to hell for me, I could take along, just for the ride, some of those successful people who are successful just for unfair reasons anyways, right? So instead of using all that negative emotion as a cue that there's something about me that might need to be transformed, I can say, well, why not just eradicate the target of my resentment, right? Not only because that sort of removes the problem of comparison, but more profoundly, and I think sort of, again, illimitlessly profoundly. Let's say you make the decision that the world's a terrible place and it's bent on your destruction. And then you think, well, what's the logical response to that? And then you think something like this. Goethe, Faust, Mephistopheles' credo. The spirit I that endlessly denies, and rightly too, for all that comes to birth is fit for overthrow, as nothing worth. Wherefore the world were better sterilized. Thus all that's here as evil recognized is gain to me, and downfall, ruin, and sin, the very element I prosper in. And Goethe draws our attention to this credo not once but twice in his writing of Faust, and has Mephistopheles say, right, once again, gone to sheer nothing, past, with null made one. What matters our creative endless toil, when at a snatch oblivion ends the coil? It is bygone. How shall this riddle run? As good as if things never had begun, yet circle back existence to possess. I'd rather have eternal emptiness. And so then you think about Cain-like figures like Stellan. And you think, well, what exactly was he motivated by? And on the one hand you think, well, he was trying to extend his cultural dominion, right? Plagued by his own self-conscious neuroticism, he wanted to extend the borders of his totalitarian certainty to every corner, just to not be plagued by the unknown. And you think, fair enough, you know, like we're all pretty nervous and a little stability is a good thing. Why? Because they make a fundamental judgment, which is the judgment of Mephistopheles. Look, life is terrible, terrible, terrible. We're self-conscious. We get sick, we go insane, we're going to die. Children, innocent children, suffer everywhere. How in the world is it right to let such a state continue? Maybe it would be better, all things considered, just to bring the whole game to an end. And so then you think, again, with Iliada, that the reason that human societies fall apart is twofold. One is, things go from bad to worse of their own accord, right? Thermodynamic reality, pure entropy. Structured entities decay. But then there's a twist. Structured entities constructed by humans are sped in their process of decay by the participants of the individuals within that society who have essentially decided that the game is not worth the price, and that under such conditions the only reasonable thing for a self-conscious, painfully self-conscious individual to do is to work as hard as he or she possibly can to take the maximum amount of revenge on the conditions of existence and to ensure that the entire game folds up, that consciousness disappears, and that being is eradicated.